Yeah, I think that each person needs to evaluate how much of their ego is wrapped up in their business. That if your ego is wrapped up in the success of your business, then your feelings are going to go up and down with the successes or failures of your business. So, the best way to do kind of some shifting there is to think about some hard and soft boundaries. So, soft boundaries are things you're kind of testing out, hard boundaries are things you've decided.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Growth. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Joe Sanok. And Joe is recently been growing. I've initially kind of started throwing a bit of a spaghetti at the wall to see what worked, and a few of those included one-on-one consultations and masterminds and automated emails, and then also focusing on membership community and podcasts and doing white label designs and doing consultations. Wrote a book, did some speaking engagements, and trying to continuing to look and find the places to grow into the market and where it expands and shrinks. So should be a great conversation. And with that much as a introduction, welcome on the podcast, Joe.
Devin, thanks so much for having me back.
Absolutely, always excited to have you. And as Joe indicated, so he's been on a few of our sister podcasts, both the Inventive Journey, Inventive Expert, and Inventive Founder. So definitely encourage you to go out and check out the various episodes on those sister podcasts to find out more about Joe and a little bit of his journey and expertise. But for today, kind of as this podcast is focused on kind of the growth that you've been pursuing more recently, and I'd hit on a few kind of in the introduction, but maybe kind of rewind, the last 12, 18 months, kind of walk us through kind of the things that you've been pursuing, the areas of growth, what you've been seeing, and, kind of what that's been looking like for you.
Yeah, over the last 12 to 18 months, we've been really kind of going back to what are the core things that are our basics in regards to just what for us kind of made things happen at the very beginning of our business. And so, we've been around since 2012. And so, Devin, I'm getting some feedback. I don't know if you hear that too. Sorry to
Nope,
interrupt, but
I can mute my microphone. Go ahead.
right. Um, So, over the last 12 to 18 months, we've been working on a number of different things, really going back to some of the basics that have worked for our audience. And so, doubling down on our membership community, really growing our one-on-one consulting, and going back to the podcast. Honestly, the podcast has been our biggest lead generator. And so, we, in the last 12 to 18 months, did 5 episodes a week. We had enough sponsors to sponsor every single one of those episodes. And so, kind of saying, okay, what's operationally worked and how do we make sure that we dig into those things? And then we have a few, projects that we do that we kind of test out the market, but I think doing what we've done well and really doubling down on that has been our focus over the last year and a half.
So yeah, so you ran through a whole bunch and let's rewind and unpack that a bit. So kind of maybe dive in a bit deeper. I know a few of the ones that you mentioned that as you were looking to, it sounds like go back to the basics, but at the same time, as a business, or most of them that I know, you're tinkering, you're figuring out what works, areas to expand, what doesn't work, and kind of throwing a bit of for lack of better words, spaghetti at the wall in the sense that you're not trying new things, not everything's going to work, but if you never break anything, you're never going to be able to fix it and improve it. And so, I know a couple of the ones you mentioned was doing one-on-one consultations and doing a bit of masterminding and automated emails is a few that I'll put in quote spaghetti that you'd thrown up against the wall, but maybe kind of walk through a little bit as to what those endeavors were and did they work out? Did the spaghetti stick, or was it one where you tried it, you failed, and you went back to the, it reinforced that the basics are the basics and the work kind of, or expand on that a bit.
Yeah, yeah. So I think with the consulting, I mean, that was our first thing we offered back in 2012. So that spaghetti's pretty stuck on the wall at this point. To me, it's more testing out what types of consulting people want. So our ideal clients are counselors in private practice. And so we've been watching that market to see how that's shifted. So in the last year and a half, we noticed that people were less just starting a practice. So during 2020, 2021, a lot of folks that were, at home and for the first time were starting practices. So people just getting going, that was what a lot of our audience wanted. Then in about the last year and a half, those folks were saying, wow, I really have exploded here. I want to add some extra clinicians. So our consulting has shifted to then help people with more one-on-one around starting a group practice. And then what do you do once you have those people? And so growing a group practice. So within that, one of our consultants has gone through a HR consulting certification to be able to, speak to W-2s and to coordinate with attorneys on, what all goes into that and to help people look at their liability. We have, some higher level consultants that we've brought on that have, 50 or 60 clinicians working in their practices. And so really finding what are those areas that we're seeing kind of bubble up, while also then allowing people that are in our membership communities to then join our consulting team. So we just hired two new consultants that have been in our memberships, and they're going to be focusing in on people that are in that startup phase, moving into that growing a group phase. So I think that just keeping the pulse of where are we seeing questions? We've done a lot of surveys, like the State of Private Practice survey in the last year, where we can then identify that the two biggest pain points for our audience right now is marketing and burnout. And so we want to have that lens whenever we're talking about consulting, when we're talking about our membership communities. We want to recognize that burnout is a big thing for people right now, and that also understanding the basics of marketing. So then that informs the kind of content we create. And so we just did an entire month on marketing. We brought in top marketing experts on the podcast. And then a lot of those individuals come into our membership community for our Ask the Experts, where we bring in experts that they can ask questions of. We're doing a whole series on the brain around burnout that's going live this month. And so that then allows us to create content that we know is going to align with what people are asking for.
No, it sounds like it was a great, iteration and honing down on things now. The drawback to, whenever people highlight what they've been doing is that you naturally want to gravitate to what works because, that's the one that is always the most fun to talk about. There's also whenever you're expanding, you're growing, you're trying new things, you're inevitably going to find some of the things that maybe didn't work or didn't work as well, or at least initially maybe approached it with the wrong guys or wrong focus on it. And so as you're kind of trying that spaghetti against the wall, what were some of the things that didn't work out as well, or that you didn't continue to pursue, or that you had to shift focus on?
Yeah, so we had some partnerships with a number of, excuse me, of different like companies where we were white labeling some things. And so we were white labeling websites, pay-per-click, SEO, partnered with this IT team. To the average consumer, it looked like we just had a full kind of arm of our business that helped. And that came out of people asking for, hey, do you know any good web designers? Do you know any good SEO people or pay-per-click people? And over, we just found that we didn't have a good referral and we didn't have a good sponsor. We didn't have someone that we really could send people to. And so we said, well, what if we brought our own team in where we negotiated, a price per hour that for us, we made a good profit, but that also we could say, hey, we're now offering websites, we're now offering these things. We had a huge waiting list. So we tested it out first, had, 20 or 30 people that were ready to jump on getting a website and things like that. The problem, though, when you partner with someone else's business and white label is you have very little administrative and project management control. So routinely, those websites were behind schedule. They missed the mark. The logos weren't at all what the people wanted. And it looked like we had really screwed up. Egg was on our face in addition to like this other company. And so we made the decision about 10 months ago to use that team just internally for our IT. They're good at IT, they're good at design, but for white labeling, it just didn't work out for us. And we were spending so much more money, pretty much all of our profit margin on cleaning up the mess. It was just like, we don't want to do this. So then we intentionally shifted to like that problem's not going away. People still need websites. They still need pay per click. They still need to have, all sorts of ways to grow digitally. So we started looking for strategic partners and went into an affiliate model where we do a clean handoff. The profit that we get from an affiliate is going to be about what we would have made on websites anyway. So, we're going to get, 500 to $800 per referral, depending on the size package people get with a website or pay per click or things like that. So, if we send an extra 10 or 20 people a month to them, that's going to make up some of what we're doing with our white labeling, and there's near zero admin that goes into it.
No, and
Oh, Devin, you're muted right now.
sorry about that. I thought I'd hit unmute, so we didn't have any of that, and I did just the opposite. So part of the experience, I guess. But no, it was interesting. Along a bit of similar lines, we different approach, but we tried a few different as you had, but a few different things to see what sticks. Evolving the law firm that I have here at Miller IP. And we tried both DIY legal tools and also a iteration, which is white label DIY legal tools. And the intent was kind of along similar lines. Hey, there are a lot of law firms that are out there that are non-competing. In other words, they don't do IP. Ones if they could expand their services to offer the white label, type of services, at least for the DIY tools. So we said, hey, we're not going to be their an attorney at their firm, but we can offer them the tools that allow them to offer that to their clients. And almost a similar type of a circumstance to where we found that it was so difficult to set expectations. In other words, the attorneys wanted you to basically be in-house attorneys to work with their clients and answer all the questions, to troubleshoot things, and then the clients wanted you to do a lot more than just what was a DIY legal tool. They didn't represent it well. They didn't know what they were doing, and so it wasn't even that was our fault. We give them all the tools, giving them a walkthrough, and they just kind of said, hey, this is white label, just plug and play, and I don't have to do anything. And they weren't willing to take the correct, approach to it. And so it's just interesting that, the white label always kind of has that appeal of, hey, this is going to be something where it's a revenue generator. And most of the people that I've known that have tried it end up learning the lesson that there's a lot more demand that people want from a white label than what a white label is intended to be. And so it's just kind of as a side note, interesting kind of the correlations between what you guys found and similarly what we'd found when we'd gone down a similar path within the law firm. So you tried white labeling, kind of learned that lesson. Now, I know you also mentioned a couple ones, I think, or one that you got into. I'm a big believer in automation when it's done properly. It can be done awesome, and it can be a way to save time, save effort, make or better follow-ups, better communications, make sure things don't slip through the crack. It can also be a headache and annoyance because people, because it or hounds people too much, or it breaks down, or doesn't work, or any number of things. And so there's kind of that trade-off. So I think one of the things we'd also talked about a little bit was kind of the balance of you guys had explored. Are there ways to automate, whether it's correspondence and emails or any or other aspects? Walk through a little bit. How did that go? Was that another thing that you threw the spaghetti at the wall and it didn't work, or you iterated through it, or you're still figuring out, or kind of catch us up there as well?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things like when you buy a new house and you start taking the drywall down and you're like, oh wow, there's also now we got to do the electrical and we thought we were just doing the plumbing. And the more you dig in, the more you realize that you really, if you're going to do it right, you got to do it right. So I think that as we've tried different approaches to communication, to our messaging, as we dig in, we just seem to find more potential that we need to work on. And so I think that some of the automations that we've worked on has really started with having a person in charge of that project. Um, so having a community coordinator who oversees our 300 people in our membership, that is the eyes and ears. So someone can tag me in a post within our private community, but I'm not always going to see that. I'm not always going to be remembering to go in there. And so getting a Slack message from Sarah saying, "Hey Joe, did you see the three questions that are in there on group practice? You might want to jump in." Or, "Hey Joe, can you record a couple of videos for me to post on social media around this?" It's outsourcing, but it's still a person that's manually doing some of that. Now, We really rely on AI to help us stay organized, to have us come up with new ideas, come up with game plans, project management. I even just earlier today recorded an interview where me and the AI, the name that she's given herself is Vega. Me and Vega had recorded a podcast earlier today because I was recording a podcast on the future of private practice. And rather than just type into AI to come up with some sort of outline, I thought, well, let's have a conversation. And where she asks me questions, I ask her questions and dig in. So we're trying to find innovative ways to communicate and see what sticks. And I do think that things are changing so quickly in regards to the types of tools that are out there that it seems like as soon as you sign up for one tool, there's three more that pop up that might be a little bit better. So we're kind of trying to take it slow and figure out what are the key performance indicators that we want to hit this year. And we've identified those specifically around podcast growth and around membership growth, and trying to stay as singularly focused on those with all of our communication as possible.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that you hit on, is for me at least, I think that there are aspects that you can't fully automate. I think that, the dream is always you'll automate your entire company and then you'll be able to go and relax and just work an hour a week and everything else you just get to go play the whole time. And I think if you go on or go with that guy, you're almost setting yourself up for failure in the sense you can't really entirely remove the individual, at least not yet, until AI reaches the entire set or sentient, and then we can all just retire. But at least for now, it's kind of one where you can supplement it with whether it's AI, whether it's automation, and then you're going to find the places where you still need that human contact or human interaction or review or otherwise doing it. So finding that balance is kind of always a bit of an iterative process. Now, kind of, circling back to one of the things you mentioned kind of at the onset of the episode, amongst all this of, iterating, trying new things, figuring out what sticks and what doesn't, it sounds like, and I'm putting words in your mouth, but definitely correct them where they're wrong. They also found that, hey, a lot of things that the basics are still the basics, they still work. And that's sometimes, yeah, you tried a whole bunch of things only to find out all these other things may be or additive or may have benefits, but the core is still where the money and the revenue and the clients are generated. And sometimes it's better to just redouble the focus on that or redouble the efforts as opposed to the new and shiny objects. And sometimes you find out it can be both, but maybe walk through kind of what shifted you or kind of helps you to recenter or figure out maybe we'll kind of go back to the basics or the core of what's been working over a number of years.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was fall of 2022. I put on an event in Cancun that we called that was called Killing It Camp, where we help therapists just learn how do you kill it in private practice, how do you do really well. Had a bunch of people fly down to Cancun, and I came back and I had salmonella, and it got so bad I ended up in the ER. And then went on vacation with my brother after my doctors gave me the all clear and got more sick on that vacation and had to have, over the last 2 years, several emergency surgeries. And all of those emergency surgeries, I was laid out for a week or two. And it was literally like saying to my team, I'm going to disappear. I'm on opioids trying to get over this pain. And they're like, the doctors are trying to get me through it all. And I can't really work. I think in those moments, you really start to evaluate as the founder, where is my time most useful? So my time was most useful with encouraging the team, kind of keeping those plates spinning without doing the work, but just like, where do you need me? What kind of quick things do you need me for? It's doing connections with higher end, partners, podcasters, strategy. It's showing up in my membership communities occasionally so that it's not just the community, but it's like Joe Sanok's there. Like a lot of people, join because they've listened to the podcast or they respect my work or read my book. And so figuring out like what are the essential things that I need to be a part of. Um, as I do that, that then allows me to say, okay, do I want to put more time into something creative and new? Or do I want to put more time into the team? Do I want to put more time into doing a little bit more consulting? Do I want to have more time of the consulting going in with other consultants so I don't have to do the work and I still get some of the money? So then, by getting so sick and being so, bedbound after those emergency surgeries, I think it really makes me step back and say, okay, I want to have a business that I lead, that my influence, my DNA is a part of, and isn't fully reliant on myself.
Mhm. No, and that makes sense. So we're already starting to reach towards the end of the episode. It feels like we just barely started to scratch the surface. But before we dive into the question, was like to wrap up each episode with, I do want to kind of catch things up. So we've gone through a number of areas of growth, things that you've tried that haven't worked, things that you've tried that have worked, refocusing on the basics, some of the other things that kind of shifted, kind of refocus or figuring out where you wanted to focus and how you wanted to tackle things. Now, if you're to kind of almost look a little bit forward looking, look out to the next 6 to 12 months as you're contemplating, hey, I want to continue to grow. I want to expand. I want to try these new things. We're going to stay centered. I'm going to retire. I'm going to live on the beach. I'm going to go hike in the mountains or whatever that might be. Kind of, if you're to look out to the next 6 to 12 months, kind of where do you see things headed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for myself, I already take time to go hike in the mountains and go sit on beaches. I was just, a couple weeks ago, we went to Guadalupe. I think it is really important to have time away from your business where you're truly away from your business. Some of the ideas that I had when I was trying to not think about my business were really good ideas that we're going to be implementing. I think for me, it's just continuing to have paced out growth. We had years where we grew by 30 to 70%. That's awesome. I wouldn't turn that down, but also, long term, I'd rather be putting more of that money back into the team to create the infrastructure that's really solid, and have, 10 to 25% growth. And I think also just evaluating the human capital that I have within practice of the practice. How do I keep investing in that? To me, I think that no matter your political swing, no matter what you think about the world right now, being connected to other humans and having each other's back is more important than ever. And so I think that making sure that I'm providing good ethical jobs for people, that we're standing up for the values that we believe in, that we're speaking up in ways that we feel is appropriate. To me, that human connection, in such a turbulent time, I think is more important than anything else I could be doing.
No, it definitely sounds like that's a great direction to be headed, a great area to be focusing on, investing in the team, making sure that they have what they need and also support and structuring in a way that you get in or focus on and enjoy the areas where you have the most value moving forward. Definitely kind of provides that balance and also it sounds like sets you up to be successful in the future. And then you almost kind of talked about, at an earlier point, one of the things that people are often facing are all the time, and it seems like even in particular it's oftentimes comes up even more so is the idea of burnout. And that kind of is a great one to shift into kind of the question we always like to wrap up this episode with or this podcast with, which is if you're to say every business owner, whether it's a worker or a business owner, but in this case, business owner doing a startup or a small business, you're going to hit a kind of highs and lows, and inevitably at some point along the journey, you're going to start to get burned out, or you're going to reach a point of burnout, or you're going to be worn out with the business. And it could be temporary, it could just be a short period of time, or it can be more extended. But, kind of when you hit that, getting worn out with the business, what do you do?
Yeah, I think that each person needs to evaluate how much of their ego is wrapped up in their business. That if your ego is wrapped up in the success of your business, then your feelings are going to go up and down with the successes or failures of your business. So, the best way to do kind of some shifting there is to think about some hard and soft boundaries. So, soft boundaries are things you're kind of testing out, hard boundaries are things you've decided. So, for example, I wrote a book called Thursday is the New Friday. I don't work on Fridays. If you, Devin, how very much I like being on your show, had said I only record on Fridays, I'd say, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pass. I don't do that. If I had a consulting client that said I can only meet with you on Friday, it's a hard boundary. If my business is on fire and my assistant sends me a Slack message on a Friday or a text message and says, Dear God, Joe, you have to show up. Things are on fire. I'm going to show up. So that's a soft boundary in that area. And so starting to determine where you can test some of this. So, if you're really busy, but you're dropping the ball with your kids or your partner or with your health or, the things that you enjoy, it might be worth evaluating. Have I put too much value into what I do? And maybe I need to try something that can pull me out of that. For me, years ago, it was improv. I joined an improv group just to see what it was like. And that's my non-negotiable every week. Every Tuesday night, I go to improv, I have fun, I play with adults, and it's ridiculous, and I laugh. For someone else, it might be golf. For someone else, it might be volunteering. Finding things that, for ourselves, give us life, give us connections that aren't necessarily always tied to the business, I think is one of the healthiest things that we can do so that we can mitigate burnout long term.
No, and I think that is, it's sometimes easier said than done. Establishing the boundaries, absolutely agree with you. And there is that balance to be found. It's sometimes hard to not get sucked in. And usually it's the business or tends to take precedent, not because it should, but just because those always feel like those are the short term. Hey, I just got to get over this hurdle, got to get over this hump, got to get this busy period. And inevitably, once you get over that, the next one comes along and you're right back to where you're at. So I think that is certainly one where you can wear yourself out because you're always forever going or doing those things that are pulling you back into business and making it difficult to have those boundaries. But finding those and finding that balance, I think, is absolutely a great piece of advice and a great thing to do as you reach those points where you're worn out. Well, now as we do wrap up towards the end of this episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more, find out
Yeah,
more?
so our website for therapists and coaches is practiceofthepractice.com. Our podcast is Practice of the Practice. We do a lot of general business as well as specific to counseling business advice on there, living a better life kind of things as well. The one that's most applicable to your audience would be our podcastlaunchschool.com. Podcast Launch School is where we teach entrepreneurs, business folks, how to launch a podcast, how to have the support that you need. We have everything from done with you to done for you services over at Podcast Launch School, with plans that would do all the editing for 4 episodes a month for less than $500 a month. So if you're looking to outsource or start a podcast, podcastlaunchschool.com would be the best place to go.
Awesome. Well, definitely a great ways to connect, and I encourage people to reach out, support a great business, expand their network, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that, thank you again, Joe, for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners who are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be guests on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveunicorn.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Joe, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin.